Hi, you're watching Cooking with Diane. I'm Diane, and today I want to talk to you about how to roast vegetables. Roasting vegetables is a really great way to bring flavor out of virtually any vegetable. If you have some sort of vegetable that you've never used before, or maybe it's been hanging out in your fridge a long time and you really want to figure out how to use it up, probably roasting would be a great way to go. My favorites and my go-tos are vegetables in the broccoli family, like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and of course potatoes and sweet potatoes. What's so great about roasting is that it concentrates the flavor by kind of drying out the vegetable. So you get a nice caramelized, crisp brown outside and a nice tender flavor concentrated inside. The one trap I think a lot of us fall into when we're roasting vegetables is we don't roast them at a high enough heat. If you're roasting your vegetables at 350, they're just kind of going to get soggy and they're not going to get that nice brown, crisp, caramelized outside. So first, to prepare any roasted vegetable, you got to cut it up and you got to preheat your oven. So I have my oven preheating to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what I usually like to roast at, 425. I've roasted at 375, I've roasted at 400, I've roasted at 450. So depending on your oven, your vegetable, and what you're feeling that day, you can vary the temperature. But I do recommend at least 400 degrees usually. So I have some Brussels sprouts here. I gave them a rinse already. They're pretty small, but I think I'm still going to cut them in half. I usually do the same two things. I take off the little brown bit at the end and I cut the whole thing in half. And this can be kind of annoying to do if you're doing a lot of Brussels sprouts, but I think it's worth it because the cut part of the Brussels sprout is going to get browner and crisper than it would if you had just left the Brussels sprout whole. But Brussels sprouts vary in size. These are pretty small. If I see any super baby ones, like smaller than a grape, I'll probably leave those ones whole. Here's a baby. It's like smaller than the tip of my nose. That can be left whole. All right, so if you have any leaves that fell off your Brussels sprouts while you were cutting them and they don't look brown or wilted or anything, go ahead and put them with your Brussels sprouts that you're going to roast. The loose leaves are going to crisp up into sort of Brussels sprouts chips around your roasted Brussels sprouts, and it's kind of a nice extra garnish. And unless I'm cutting something up in advance or I'm cutting up a ton of Brussels sprouts, I'm going to cut them on my board and put them directly onto my pan. I don't feel like there's any reason to dirty another bowl here. So this is just a regular aluminum roasting pan. If you don't want to put your vegetables directly on aluminum, you can line your pan with parchment paper, not wax paper, but parchment paper, and it'll protect your vegetables from interacting with that aluminum. However, the parchment paper is going to heat trap moisture a little bit more, so your vegetables won't end up browning and crisping quite as well as if they were directly on the pan. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. I don't find that aluminum is harmful to my vegetables unless there's something really acidic on them. So I usually roast my vegetables straight on the pan. And right on the pan, I'm going to drizzle my vegetables with olive oil and sprinkle them with salt and pepper. No matter what I'm cooking, these are the things I use. Oil is important so that the vegetables don't dry out in the oven, and it also works as a conductor for the heat, so it'll help them get that crispy outside. How much oil? I don't know. I usually just drizzle a zigzag over them. You want enough to generously coat all of the vegetables, but you don't need so much that there's pools of olive oil on your pan. I'm going to sprinkle with salt, one big old pinch all over the Brussels sprouts. And I do pepper if I feel like pepper is going to taste good on this vegetable, but pepper isn't a requirement. Then I just mix the vegetables up with my hands. No need to dirty a spoon or a bowl here. And because the Brussels sprouts have a round side and a cut side, I put the cut side down so that it can get the most direct heat and form a nice brown crispy crust on the bottom. And if you have so many Brussels sprouts on your pan that they're not in a single layer, that they're kind of mounded and stacked on top of each other, then you might want to get a second pan. You really want your vegetables in a single layer so they have that contact with the metal of the pan, again, to get that heat conduction, to get them nice and brown and crispy on the outside. And if at this point I realize that I haven't been preheating the oven, that I need to preheat the oven first, it's okay. They can hang out on this pan for a little while. But if you're ready to go, if your oven's at 425, then go ahead and put them in there. So now the question everybody always has is, how long do I roast them for? I can't give you an exact answer because every vegetable is different. Every oven is different. But what I do is I set a timer for 20 minutes. The timer isn't there to tell me that the vegetables are done. The timer is there to remind me, hey, check your vegetables and see what they look like. And I'll check them every 20 minutes. Generally, a firm vegetable like broccoli or potatoes is going to take about 30 to 45 minutes to cook so that it's brown and crisp on the outside but tender on the inside. But it totally depends on the vegetable. And these Brussels sprouts are really small, so they'll probably cook in the shorter time frame, like more like 25 to 30 minutes. So I've set a timer for 20 minutes, and we'll check them after 20 minutes and see what they look like. So these are my Brussels sprouts after 20 minutes. You can see they're already starting to brown on the top. And I want to give them a stir to see if they've browned on the bottom too. They have. So they should look about like that on the outside. But it's also important that they're cooked all the way through on the inside. If you like crispy veggies, you don't have to cook them as long as I do, but I like my vegetables to be nice and soft on the inside. Not mushy, but soft and tender. You can always take a fork and see if it's easy to pierce the vegetables. With something like Brussels sprouts, I just kind of squish it with my fingers. If you feel like neither of these methods is really helping you tell if they're done, then go ahead and taste one, but blow on it first because it's going to be really hot. So these are actually perfect. They still have enough texture that I have to chew them. They're not turning to mush in my mouth. But they're salty and crispy on the outside and still nice and tender on the inside. So this only took 20 minutes. If they were bigger Brussels sprouts, they might take up to 45 minutes. But I would still want to check them every 15 to 20 minutes to give them a stir, make sure they're cooking evenly, and see if they're done. So in my home cooking, I usually like to let the flavor of the vegetable shine. So I almost always just do olive oil, salt, and pepper on whatever I'm roasting. I feel like so much flavor is developed just through the roasting process that it doesn't need much more than that. If you're a spice person, if you really want to punch it up, there's a couple things you can do to your roast vegetables to add some extra flavor. So I have some cauliflower here. It's already been cut up into bite-sized pieces. And in addition to the olive oil, salt, and pepper, which I will do no matter what, I'm going to add some dried spices. This is a great opportunity to play around in your spice cabinet, maybe try out those spices that you've been afraid to use, and try like maybe 2 or 3 on a vegetable. Cauliflower is really great to add spices to because it really absorbs a lot of that flavor. I love to roast cauliflower with curry powder. Today I've decided to do some smoked paprika and some thyme. So how much? Again, it totally depends on how much of vegetable you have, how much you like that spice. But in general, I'd say probably about a teaspoon or so per sheet pan full of vegetables. And when you're using dried spices on roasted vegetables, you can mix them in with the vegetables before they go in, and they can roast with the vegetables. They're not going to burn. You can also do whole spices. If you have cumin seeds or fennel seeds, those are really great roasted on vegetables. I love to roast carrots with caraway seeds. So in addition to my spices, I'm still going to do salt. And I'm going to drizzle everything with olive oil. And the olive oil is going to help get all those spices to stick to my cauliflower. And I'm going to smush it up with my hands. So there's my cauliflower, and you can see it got dyed a little bit red from the smoked paprika, which I think is a really nice feature of adding spices to my roasted vegetables. If I wanted to add fresh whole herbs to my roasted vegetables, I could actually throw in a couple sprigs of thyme or rosemary here, and they would get really aromatic in the oven and add their flavor that way. If I wanted to add something soft like parsley or cilantro, I wouldn't want to add that until after the vegetable is roasted because parsley is just going to shrivel in the oven. So I'm going to put my cauliflower in the oven and we'll check it after 15 to 20 minutes. So this is my cauliflower after 20 minutes. I'm really starting to smell the spices and it is getting brown on the bottom, but I'm not sure if it's cooked all the way through. So whenever I check my vegetables, I give them a stir and I'm going to taste one. It's still a little crunchy. I think these can go longer. I also think they could use more salt. This is the benefit to tasting as you go, is you can tell if something needs more salt or more spices. So when I put them back in the oven, I'm going to use my best educated guess to decide how much longer to put the timer for. These were kind of getting soft in the center and they were getting brown on the outside, but they could be browner on the outside and they could be softer in the center. So I'm going to check them in about 10 minutes this time. So this is my cauliflower after it's roasted another 10 minutes. It's definitely browner on the outside and softer on the inside. But if I wanted to keep going, I would just give it a stir and roast it another 10 minutes until it's brown on the outside and soft on the inside to my liking. So that's how to roast vegetables to make them super flavorful and super delicious. A really easy way to add a vegetable to your dinner. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.